Namaskar, welcome everyone. Please have a seat, and we'll begin with some hymns and stotra. And Swami will give us a talk on Swami Vivekananda. Following that, we'll have Arati.
We'll have some Q&A also.
We'll have a Q&A session, and then we'll have an Arati. And while we are going out, please collect some prasadam. Thank you for coming. And please switch your phones to silent mode if you can at this time. Thank you.
হে মোর স্বামীজি তোমার চরণ প্রান্তে মোরা কত ভাবে ঋণী। হে মোর স্বামীজি তোমার চরণ প্রান্তে মোরা কত ভাবে ঋণী। তুমি দিয়েছ স্বদেশে প্রাণ, বিশ্ব মাঝে তুলেছ তার সম্মান। বলেছ এবার কেন্দ্র ভারতবর্ষ মিলন তীর্থধাম। প্রাচ্য প্রতীচ্য মিলিবে হেথায়, এই তো শান্তিধাম। হে মোর স্বামীজি ভুলি নাই, ভুলি নাই, ভুলি নাই তব দান। হে মোর স্বামীজি তোমার চরণ প্রান্তে মোরা কত ভাবে ঋণী। হে মোর স্বামীজি হে মোর স্বামীজি বিশ্ব আজ তব চরণ প্রান্তে দাঁড়িয়ে। হে মোর স্বামীজি বিশ্ব আজ তব চরণ প্রান্তে দাঁড়িয়ে। তুমি শোনালে তাদের বারতা মহান, শোনো হে বিশ্বজন ত্যাগের মন্ত্রে হওয়ান। পৃথিবী তোমার দেশ, ভাই বলে করো সবারে আলিঙ্গন। বলেছ এবার কেন্দ্র ভারতবর্ষ মুক্তির তীর্থধাম। এই মহামানবের সাগর তীর্থে শোনো মুক্তির সমগান। হে মোর স্বামীজি ভুলি নাই, ভুলি নাই, ভুলি নাই তব দান। হে মোর স্বামীজি তোমার চরণ প্রান্তে মোরা কত ভাবে ঋণী। তুমি দিয়েছ স্বদেশের প্রাণ, বিশ্ব মাঝে তুলেছ তার সম্মান। বলেছ এবার কেন্দ্র ভারতবর্ষ মিলন তীর্থধাম। প্রাচ্য প্রতীচ্য মিলিবে হেথায়, এই তো শান্তিধাম। হে মোর স্বামীজি ভুলি নাই, ভুলি নাই, ভুলি নাই তব দান। হে মোর স্বামীজি। জয় বীরেশ্বর বিবেক ভাস্কর জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ, জয় বীরেশ্বর বিবেক ভাস্কর, জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ। ইন্দু নিভানন সুন্দর লোচন, ইন্দু নিভানন সুন্দর লোচন, বিশ্বমানব চিরবন্ধন। জয় বীরেশ্বর বিবেক ভাস্কর, জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ। প্রেম ঢালো ঢালো কান্তি সুবিমল, অধিগত বেদ বেদান্ত, ত্যাগ তিতিক্ষায় তপস্যায় উজ্জ্বল, চিত্ত নির্মল শান্ত। জয় বীরেশ্বর বিবেক ভাস্কর, জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ। কর্ম ভক্তি জ্ঞান ত্রিশূল ধারণ, ছেদন জীব মোহ বন্ধন, ব্রহ্মপরায়ণ নমো নারায়ণ, দেহি দেহি চরণর বিন্দ। জয় বীরেশ্বর বিবেক ভাস্কর, জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ। জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ, জয় জয় শ্রী বিবেকানন্দ।
Namaskar, everyone. So Swami Sarvapriyanandaji is here with us. We are very glad to have him here. For you who have come here before, you know him, and for who are new, Swami Sarvapriyananda had joined the Ramakrishna mission in '94, and I believe in 2004 he took sannyasa. He doesn't need any introduction, but please feel free to come here, interact with him, get all the wisdom we can receive from him. Thank you, Swamiji, for coming. And this is the setup. So we have about an hour.
So what's the time now?
The time is 4:35, and Arati generally happens at an hour, but today we can slide in 10 more minutes if we can.
5:30.
5:30.
Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suraye Satchit Sukhaswarupaya Swami Tapaharine. Good evening and namaste, everybody. In this series, we have generally been studying this book, Aparokshanubhuti, but we won't do that today. Today, because it's a follow-up to the Vivekananda Jayanti, which was last week. So I'm going to talk about a broader picture, spirituality as a whole, as taught by Swami Vivekananda. Don't worry, it'll be even more interesting than this dry old book. Swami Vivekananda was an extraordinary personality. I'm biased, of course, because I'm part of the order. But I think he was the most extraordinary, at least spiritual personality that India has produced in recent history. I think the world has produced in recent history. That's my take on it. In fact, if you're more interested, in this last year, two remarkable books were written about Vivekananda. One published from Oxford University Press, Swami Medhananda, very brilliant young monk of our order, who's actually from this area, from Boston. Yeah. So he wrote this book, Swami Vivekananda's Vedantic Cosmopolitanism. Extraordinary book, wonderful. I haven't finished it yet. I'm reading it. Really good book. That's Swami Vivekananda's Vedantic Cosmopolitanism from Oxford University Press last year, Swami Medhananda. The second book was Guru to the World, Professor Ruth Harris from Oxford University, but the book was published from Harvard University Press. So two leading publishers in the world, leading academician, a historian from Oxford University. And she gave a talk at our Vedanta Society a few months ago at the launch of her book. And we asked, how did you become interested in Vivekananda? Because her interest is in French history, modern French history. So she said, while studying French history, she came across Romain Rolland, or Roma Rolla, however you pronounce it, and then talks about, he writes about his interest in Sri Ramakrishna and Vivekananda. And then she became interested in who is this Vivekananda? And she says, I read Vivekananda's letters, and she says, I was fascinated. It's an extraordinary personality. So she started researching several years, and then the book is this Guru to the World. One is this Guru to the World is biographical about Vivekananda, especially about Vivekananda and the women in the West, in Europe, in England, especially in England and in America. And it's just a biographical book. I mean, just one glimpse of the extraordinary effect that Vivekananda had. I was reading recently, Vivekananda writes about Vedanta. He says, Vedanta is, so far the masses have been neglected, and the women too have been neglected, generally in the world, especially in India. And now the time has come when the masses must live non-dualism, and this will happen, this teaching will happen through women. Now, the idea was so far, non-dualism, Advaita Vedanta, this stuff is meant for the elite, people like you, people who are very intelligent. But no, I really mean it. It's very, like the sharpest of minds, philosophical approach to life and religion. For them, it's non-dualism, but for the masses, in India especially, but for the masses, you have temples and worship and rituals and bhakti, and that's it. Recently, a professor at Professor Edwin Bryant from Rutgers, he was giving a talk at the Vedanta Society, and he said, your Vedanta, who reads all this stuff? It's theoretical, it's not real Hinduism. Your Patanjali Yoga Sutras, go in India and go and sit on the train and talk to the person next to him and to you and ask the common man there, have you read Yoga Sutras of Patanjali? He'll probably recognize Patanjali from Baba Ramdev, but not the Yoga Sutras. But if you ask, do you know Ram? Do you know Krishna? Of course. So dualistic religion, bhakti religion, that is the religion of the masses, and that's how it was understood. The masses, they have a dualistic religion. Temples, mosques, churches, these are for the masses. Spiritual philosophy is for the elite. Not only that, it was also thought, I'm just saying, imagine this classical Advaita Vedanta, Shankara and post-Shankara. Who were the people who practiced it, who studied it and practiced it, who owned it as their own practice? Usually, it was the upper castes, Brahmins, and that too Brahmin males, and that too male Brahmins who became sannyasis. It's sort of a core monastic kind of philosophy, and that too for a very elite group of monastics. From that, imagine, Vivekananda is taking this, he said, I will take the Vedanta which has been confined to the few monks and pandits. Vedanta, it was confined to the forests and caves I shall scatter it broadcast across the cities of the world. And he says, this, which was religion of the masses, this, where more or less women were excluded from this. He says, this will be done. They will become the teachers of Vedanta and now and in the future. So this is the kind of radical rethinking which Vivekananda did. Did it take? Did it work? More or less. It's working, and you can see it being worked out in society all over. I was in, if you go walking in Central Park in New York, you will see this new statue. There are a lot of statues. So in the literary walk, so there are statues of poets. That's why it's called the literary walk. Poets. And there's writers, and they're all white, male, British, not even American. Shakespeare and Robert Burns and Walter Scott and so on. And then they suddenly realized there is no statue of a woman in Central Park, 700 acres, except Mother Goose. So then they got the statue of the suffragettes, Sojourner Truth, and the three suffragette leaders of the suffragette movement. Very nice statues they put up just 2 or 3 years ago. And what I mean by that is, a huge change is coming. And it has been coming for the last 110. In fact, when Vivekananda came here to the East Coast of the United States, when he went to Boston, when he went to Harvard University, he was invited by Professor William James, to give a talk at Harvard University. Women were not allowed to study there at that time, let alone teach. But you see, a vast change which has come in 100 years. I'm not saying it's all due to Vivekananda, but he was one of the pioneers of this. All the way back in India at that time, when he came back from the West, he was interviewed. Leading issue, burning issue in those times. One issue was widow remarriage. Should widows be allowed to remarry or not? That was the big issue. And Vivekananda was asked this question. Any leading thinker was asked this question. Where do you stand on this issue? Because Vidyasagar and others, they were in favor of introducing the law to permit widow remarriage. And there were conservative pundits and all who said, no, this is against tradition and custom, should not be allowed, and so on. So Vivekananda was asked, are you for or against? He said, his answer was interesting. He said, am I a widow that you're asking me this question? You're surprised. No, but what do you mean? Either you're for this or against it. Then he explained. He said that what I mean is, you give girls the same education and freedom that you give to your boys, and then let them decide. Now see how perceptive this is. Why I'm saying, it's a digression, but it just shows a glimpse into how forward-thinking Vivekananda was. Tonika Sharkar, who is a historian in Delhi University, or Jain, I forget, she gave a talk in one of our colleges, in Vidyamandir College, several years back, on this very question, historical analysis of what happened in late 19th century in the widow remarriage issue. And she said, notice one thing in this whole debate of widow remarriage. It sounds so archaic here in America in 21st century, but it was a big issue in those days in India. So in this whole issue of widow remarriage, they should be allowed to remarry, they should not be allowed to remarry. On both sides, reformists and conservatives, they're all men. Nobody asked a woman. Nobody asked the widows. And the voice was not heard because most women in those days were not allowed higher education, literacy even. And so even the magazines in which the writings were going on, journals, articles, no women were writing. Now, she said she found out a journal in those days, Bengali magazine, in which a lady had written, an educated lady in those days, and she was a widow, and she had written on this issue. She says, I see people debating this hotly, whether I have the right to remarry or not to remarry. It's interesting that nobody asks me. Now, one might think, as I thought when I was listening to that lecture, what other option is there? It's a binary, yes or no. So what new idea will she give if we ask her? But only a man can think in that way. Because she writes, nobody asks me. If you ask me, I would say, I don't want to remarry and go under the thumb of another man. I don't want to remain unmarried and come back and remain under the thumb of my brothers. I want the same education and freedom as the men have, and then I will decide what to do with my life. Once you hear it, it sounds like what Americans call a no-brainer. But people didn't think in those days, except Vivekananda. How interesting. When they asked him, he says, give girls the same education and freedom that the boys you give to your boys, and let them decide. They will solve their problems themselves. And he used to say to men, hands off. What I'm trying to say is that has become the spirit. After Vivekananda, and you see in the last 80, 90, 100 years or so, what a tremendous silent revolution has happened in the lives of women across the world, especially in India. Anyway, back to Vivekananda. I was just thinking, Vivekananda, what would he have looked like? This is what he looks like. But what would he have looked like when he was 60, 80, 90 years old? We have no idea. And also, we don't want to have that idea because we want to see Vivekananda like that. Forever a young person, frozen in immortal youth. That's why in India, Swami Vivekananda's birthday, 12th January, is a National Youth Day. And he does symbolize, encompass the real spirit of youth, the highest and noblest spirit of youth. Just consider what he did. In 10 years, in 1893, the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, that's when the world got to know Vivekananda as Vivekananda. And on the 4th of July, 1902, again, 4th of July, 1902 in India, he passed. In less than 10 years, whatever he did in less than 10 years. What did he do? He always used to say, I'm a man in a hurry. One of his well-wishers, I think it was Sarah Bull or somebody, or Mrs. Waldo, who wrote to him, cautioning him not to speak so harshly. He was quite straightforward, point blank. To the Indians, he spoke very harshly. We know when he went back to India, the lectures from Colombo to Almora. But here to the Americans also, he criticized them with no uncertain terms for their dollar worship. So she wrote to him, telling him not to speak so boldly. And then he wrote back saying that, Madam, I am a man in a hurry. I have no time to be sweet. I have a message to deliver. I shall deliver it after my own fashion. So what did he do in these 10 years? The man in a hurry. First of all, he built this bridge between the East and the West, between India and the West through America. When he stood up to speak in the World Parliament of Religions, Sister Nivedita writes, at that point, when Vivekananda stood up in front of him, remember, we talk about the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, but it was part of a much wider celebration, the Columbian Exposition, the Universal Exposition. So in front of Vivekananda was the modern West, with all its inventiveness, energy, ambition, and hope, and looking forward to the future. So whatever science, technology, Edison was there, Thomas Edison. Tesla was there. There were expositions on different cultures of the world, on the latest inventions of science and technology, all of that. Part of it was the World Parliament of Religions. Part of that. So Nivedita writes, when Vivekananda stood up to speak in Chicago, the World Parliament of Religions, in front of him was the modern West. Behind him was 5,000 years of patient development of spirituality in India. And when he stood up to speak, the East and the West met. It was a meeting point not only of the East and the West, it was a meeting point of the past and the future. He embodied the spiritual wisdom of India, the jnana, the yoga, the bhakti, all of the spiritual realizations of India, he embodied in a powerful capsule. But he also was looking forward not just to the past, to the future, of what spirituality, religion will be in the future, what we are seeing now. What he gave is useful for us today. We'll talk about that today. In fact, the real theme of all of this which I'm saying is introduction. The real theme of my talk today will be Vivekananda's teachings on the 4 yogas. That's what I'll talk about just in a while. So he built this bridge the accumulated spiritual treasures of India. Phil Goldberg, in his book American Veda, he has traced how Hinduism came to the United States, how it spread, and how it has influenced American culture. And he starts with Vivekananda. He says how Vivekananda came. Before that, also people in America were introduced to Hindu thought, especially the transcendentalists. Here itself, actually, Emerson and Thoreau, Walt Whitman. So they were heavily influenced by especially the Gita and the Upanishads. And the thinking people, the highly educated people in the United States, they did read Emerson. Emerson was widely read in those days. So they knew a little bit about Hindu thought philosophy. But powerfully, as an authentic practitioner and representative of Hinduism, the first person they saw was Vivekananda. He's the one who built that bridge. He's the one who opened the door. Where I am now, the Vedanta Society of New York, that was started by Vivekananda. The other Vedanta Society started was on the other coast in San Francisco in 1899. But not just the Vedanta, Vivekananda, not just the Vedanta Society. Many other teachers, they came in the wake of Vivekananda, coming from India, traveling across this bridge which was built by Swami Vivekananda. We hear the well-known teachers. So the Self-Realization Fellowship, Swami Yogananda, came maybe just 20 years after Vivekananda, less than that. You know of Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, who came in the 1950s, 60s actually, 60s. New York again, where ISKCON, which is worldwide now, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, Prabhupada came from India. And interestingly, they all came from more or less the same area in Bengal. Yoga, which is a worldwide phenomenon, especially in the United States now. And in fact, it was more popular in the United States than in India. Now, thank you, a little more popular in India. But here in New York, in the block, you could see a yoga studio. And that also came from India. I mean, people like Pattabi Joyce, Krishnamacharya, who else? Iyengar. And they all came from the same place in Mysore. So they started. And a whole series of teachers, not just Hinduism, Buddhism. It came in different waves. The Zen from Japan, Tibetan Buddhism, especially very popular now, Vipassana, mindfulness. So all of this coming from India or Indian traditions. Not just the teachers from India, but also the intellectuals here in the United States. Phil Goldberg's book has a very interesting chapter. The Swamis taught the smart guys, and the smart guys taught the rest of us. That's the name of the chapter. So in that chapter, he speaks about Christopher Isherwood, Aldous Huxley, Gerald Hurd, Joseph Campbell, J.D. Salinger, Houston Smith, a range of towering intellectuals. Some professors, some writers and essayists and novelists, some thinkers in the fields as diverse as religion and mythology and so on. Christopher Isherwood, who was one of the leading novelists at that time, and he wrote this book. So Isherwood, Huxley, Gerald Hurd, they all came under the influence and they were inspired by Swami Prabhavanandaji, who founded the Vedanta Society of Southern California. Isherwood wrote this most popular biography of Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples. And they paid the price. We now remember Isherwood, he wrote the book, but many people don't know what kind of price he paid for it, because I was reading reviews in those days. And the general feeling, he was sort of a darling of the jet set, intellectual jet set here, the East Coast and the West Coast. And the feeling was, oh, such a promising young novelist, now he has become, part of some strange Hindu cult or something. But he stuck to it till the end. He was very close to the Vedanta Society there in California. Aldous Huxley's incredible book, The Perennial Philosophy, it's a masterpiece for the ages, based again on Vedantic thoughts. Most important scholar in comparative religion, pioneer, Houston Smith. He was in Kansas City and St. Louis, and he was very close to the Vedanta Society of St. Louis, which was headed by Swami Sarvapriyanandaji. And his book, The Religions of the World, is a masterpiece in comparative religion. First chapter is on Hinduism. If you read that, you will clearly see the influence of the Ramakrishna Mission sadhus there. Here, closer, New York, the most famous novelist at that time, Salinger, J.D. Salinger. He was a disciple of, actually initiated disciple of Swami Nikhilanandaji on the east side, in the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Center. So his books were very influential. Catcher in the Rye, I mean, somebody told me about it to read it. I tried reading it. I didn't really like it, couldn't finish it. And somebody told me, too late, you should have read it as a teenager. You're too old for Catcher in the Rye now. But I was reading his book, Franny and Zoe, which contains a number of references to Karma Yoga, to Raja Yoga. He presented a copy to Swami Nikhilananda. In the inside cover, he scribbled, Challenger. He said, I wrote this book to spread the ideas of Vedanta. It's one of the very well-known and beloved books in American literature. So all of this was the influence. And it continues till today. You see across the board, many people cannot trace it back to Vivekananda, but if you just study it closely, you can see the tremendous impact he made. It sort of opened the doors and made it acceptable, Eastern spirituality. So that's one side of what he did. Then he went back to India, the other side of his mission. In fact, Nivedita says, when he spoke to the Americans in the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago in 1893, the Americans heard a new message, but the words traveled back across the dark seas to his motherland, asleep, and the nation awoke to a new sense of its greatness. So his sleeping motherland, which he had traveled across length and breadth on foot, and he had seen it's not a dying civilization, it's a sleeping civilization. It needs to be awakened, colonized, starving, superstitious, divided heavily along caste lines and religious lines. And so how to awaken it? And that's what he did in his speeches across from Colombo to Almora. And across the time, in his writings and speeches to Indians, he awakened them to a sense of their greatness. First of all, their spiritual greatness. He saw the central theme of Indian life was spirituality, religion. And he says anything that has to be done in India, religion, has to be, you have to work through religion. That's not the kind of understanding that most Indian intellectuals and thinkers have had until recently, because intellectuals, no intellect here. Mostly, I would say in India, it's just blind copying of the West, aping of the West. Not one single original thought. You just see what's going on in the humanities departments here in the West and just copy it and reproduce it there. So this idea was not, but real thinkers, I mean, who genuinely felt the pulse of Indian life, they realized the connection between spirituality and India. Whether it's Rabindranath Tagore, Mahatma Gandhi, they understood. To arouse India to a struggle for its freedom from the British seems like a political struggle. Why did Mahatma Gandhi make it a religious movement? Why at all a Mahatma? They realized, unless you are that, you cannot mobilize India, the masses of India. Masses of India, the Indian spirit responds to spirituality, doesn't respond to political ideas. You want to do politics, to do it through religion. You want to do economics, you want to do education, all of that. There should be a spiritual impulse behind it. Anyway, this is just one idea. Many such ideas, treasure trove of such ideas are there in Vivekananda. Only now sort of people are beginning to take a fresh look at it. So this is what he did in 10 years, 1894, 1893 to 1902. And then he was gone. He used to say, I won't live to see 40. By 39, he was gone. So this is why I say this is the spirit of youth. That in 10 years, he was a man in a hurry. He finished this tremendous task of the bridge between the East and the West and the transmission of Indian spirituality across the world for the benefit of all. And the awakening of his motherland into new life. He did all of that He is the source of it. And you would say that you are biased, that's why you're saying such thing. No, many great thinkers have testified to it more and more. Pandit Nehru, after the independence of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, in a speech in the Ramakrishna Mission in Delhi, he said, in my generation, we all read Vivekananda and we were all inspired by Vivekananda. Mahatma Gandhi, he says, my love for my motherland was increased 1,000-fold after reading Vivekananda. Rabindranath Tagore, he says, in Vivekananda, read Vivekananda. In Vivekananda, everything is positive, nothing negative. Subhash Chandra Bose, he actually ran away to become from home to become a monk. But then later he went back and he became this freedom fighter. All throughout, greatly inspired by Vivekananda. Subhash Bose, one of Vivekananda's closest disciples was Sharat Chandra Chakraborty, not the writer. He was an employee in the Indian Postal Service, British Indian Postal Service at that time. So he was very close to Vivekananda. And in the last years of Vivekananda's life, and his conversations with Vivekananda, he has written with a book. A book has been published, Talks with Swami Vivekananda. Between him, that's between Sharat Chandra and Vivekananda. Very nice Q&A format. It's really worth reading. After Swami Vivekananda passed in 1902, Sharat Chandra, so wherever he went in India, he was posted in different places because of his job. So wherever he went, he would start these Vivekananda study circles. And he would talk about Vivekananda, teach Vivekananda's complete works, and people would gather around him. The attraction was he spoke in a very inspiring way because he knew Vivekananda personally, and he has so much close interaction. So it was very inspiring to listen to Sharat Chandra. So once he was in Cuttack in Orissa, and he started his usual Vivekananda study circle. And he would walk back and forth in the group and talk about Vivekananda. And in that group was Janakinath Boshu, very well-known barrister of Cuttack. And he would come with his little son, who would sit quietly and listen in fascination to this talk about Vivekananda. Who was little son? Subhash. Later became Subhash Bose. A whole range of leaders of India were inspired by him, and they acknowledged that our source of inspiration is Vivekananda. This was the impact that Vivekananda had on India also. A historian says he was the first Indian. In what sense? Until Vivekananda, most of the leaders, thinkers, writers in India, including political leaders, the Indian National Congress was newly founded at that time. They used to think of themselves, refer to themselves as Bengali, Punjabi, Maharashtrian, Tamil, like that. Vivekananda consistently called himself an Indian. And very soon, in Vivekananda's time, starting from then onwards, continuously, all leaders of note, they started calling themselves Indian. This historian says Vivekananda was the unconscious father of Indian nationalism. Not deliberately, he did not do that. Just his spirit, it developed into what is modern Indian nationalism. So all of this is contribution, Vivekananda's contribution. This is the spirit of Vivekananda. Who was Vivekananda? Sister Nivedita again writes that Vivekananda, if you want to understand Vivekananda, you see that he was constituted by three things. First and most important, of course, was Sri Ramakrishna, his guru, Sri Ramakrishna. So the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna formed the spirit of Vivekananda. What Vivekananda did afterwards, you can trace it back to the teachings and the inspiration he got from Sri Ramakrishna. That's one. Second, his own studies in Indian philosophy, especially Vedanta, and of course Western philosophy and science and whatever was available at that time, his own study and thinking and understanding. So that is the second constituent of Vivekananda. And third, his actual experience of India, his motherland, walking back and forth, meeting people across India and getting an impression of India. So these three went to make Vivekananda: Ramakrishna, Vedanta, or let's say East and West philosophy, and India itself. I mean, if you look, take a more fine-grained look at what Vivekananda achieved, what he did, what a vast range of his contribution, his ideas. I mean, imagine going from India to the United States on the ship. At that time, he was unknown. He's a young monk. He meets Jamshedji Tata, Jamshedji Tata was coming to the United States at that time on that ship, and they meet a Parsi businessman coming for business opportunities in the United States from British colonial India, and a virtually unknown young Bengali Hindu monk. And what do they talk about? The future of science education in India. How incredible. And Vivekananda said that we should set up not just business, research, fundamental research in science in India. Years later, Tata writes to Vivekananda. At that time, Vivekananda was already well known. You remember that we met, that letter is available. You remember that we met on the ship, and you had told me about this idea of starting an institute for fundamental research in science. I'm seized of that idea. I want to do this. And I want you to be that. I cannot think of anybody who's more fit to be the director of this than you. Of course, Vivekananda did not become. He was almost time for him to go. But it matured as the Indian Institute of Science, at that time Tata Institute in Bangalore. Even now, if you go, the auto wallahs there, they call it Tata Institute. Yes.
It's called the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research.
No, that's different. That's much later. That's in Mumbai. This is the Bangalore one, Indian Institute of Science, much older. This started in 1910s, in the teens, the early 20th century. TIFR was, I think, post-independence probably. Vikram Sarabhai. Yeah. So that was much later. This was the grandfather of all fundamental science institutes in India. And that was from Vivekananda's idea through Jamshedji Tata. If you go in Bangalore, even now, the auto wallahs, they will say Tata Institute, Tata Institute. Now it's called Indian Institute of Science. So this last year, I gave a talk there, and I said that, see, the products of this institute were among the people who started the various Indian Institute of Technology and other scientific research institutes, education institutes. I mean, Sarabhai himself, TIFR, IIM Ahmedabad. How interesting. And one more institute, a research laboratory, I think, in physics. So all of these people, they had some connection. Either they studied in IISc Bangalore, or they were connected to people, they were taught by people who studied in IISc Bangalore. And they went on to start all these institutes. Right now, the IT industry, which is booming in Bangalore, see, it's like a complete circle. These people started the IITs and other institutes. The products of that fueled the rise of Silicon Valley and the computer industry in the United States, which went back and again led to the development of Bangalore as this IT hub today, Bangalore, Hyderabad, and other places. Anyway, not only Vivekananda gave the idea, we don't know the next part of the history. I also did not know until recently, a few years back. When neither Tata nor Vivekananda saw the development of Indian Institute of Science. Vivekananda passed away in 1902. Tata passed, he gave money, and Maharaja of Mysore actually donated the land there, but it was not allowed. The British government said the natives have no need of science research. No permission was not given. Who did it? It was finally Sister Nivedita who fought in India, and she took it to the British Parliament and got permission for the starting of the Indian Institute of Science. This was another contribution of Vivekananda. The disciples he created. Foremost among them, not just the monks of the Ramakrishna Mission. He started the whole Ramakrishna Mission, which is why I'm here today. Why we are all here today. This institute also is there. But not just the monks of the Ramakrishna Mission, but people like, either directly like people like Nivedita, or indirectly people like Subhash Bose and others. Sister Nivedita, just consider her contribution. Whether it's the Indian Institute of Science, encouraging the great scientist, Jagdish Bose, a contribution to science, contribution to women's education. Such hard work in starting the school for the girls and convincing Bengali families there in Calcutta to send their daughters to a school. Vivekananda told her, you must go to them, to those families, as a Hindu. Don't go as a Mem Sahib from England. And in that circumstance, to live like that, absolutely like a Hindu lady, in order to convince, and still it was almost impossible. And yet she did it. Education, women's education, and diverse impact, especially Indian freedom struggle, which is why she dissociated herself as a formal member of the Ramakrishna Mission, so that the British government would not target the Ramakrishna Mission. But she consistently encouraged interaction with Aurobindo Ghosh and others, consistently encouraged the Indian freedom fighters, freedom from the British. All of that traced back to Vivekananda. Another side, the harmony of religions. Of course, this is a great teaching of his master Sri Ramakrishna. Imagine 9/11, if you just say 9/11, everybody knows what it means across the world. Especially if you're in New York, it has a clear meaning. What it means is fanaticism in the name of religion, mass murder, and terrorism. That's what it means. And yet, the answer to this question, answer to this problem, was given more than 100 years before 9/11 on another 9/11. When Vivekananda stood up to speak in the World Parliament of Religions, it was 9/11, 11th September 1893. And his first message was the harmony of religions, the message of not just tolerance, acceptance, that all religions are true. There's no need for violence in the name of religion. And he says human civilization has been retarded because of this violence in the name of religion. We would probably be further along in the story of human civilization if we had not fought these violent wars in the name of religion. And he gives the story of the frog in the well. That I, as a Hindu, am sitting in my little well, a frog in the well, thinking this is the whole world. And the Christian is sitting in his frog, like a frog in the well, and the Muslim and the Buddhist and all. And yet, all of those are true paths. The spirituality of God is not exhausted by one or two or three religions. All of them are true paths, and there is more beyond. So, harmony of religions, which is, again, today, it's a message that is very much needed. That all religions are true and they lead to enlightenment, God realization, freedom. They're different also. Some people criticize us, Ramakrishna Mission, that, oh, you guys, you teach all religions are the same. But nobody ever said, neither Sri Ramakrishna nor Vivekananda nor we ever said that all religions are same. That's ridiculous. How can religions be same? They're all different, and it's good that they're different. That contributes to the richness of world's religions. They're different, but they're different paths to the same realization. They are all correct, valid, because they work. If you genuinely follow any one of them, in the highest ideals in any one of them, that will lead you to peace, to enlightenment, to salvation, moksha, freedom, whatever you call it. This idea of religions as paths. The problem is when you take religion itself as the truth. You forget God, Brahman, Allah, whatever it is, and you take religion itself as the truth. Then there's a clash. But if you take religion as a path, Sri Ramakrishna said, Jato mot, tato path. Path literally is very happily, the words almost a similar, path and path. Literally means the same thing. As many religions, so many paths to God. So many paths to enlightenment. The paths are all correct, but they're different paths. You can have different paths to come to the same place. And they all work because they get you here. So harmony of religions, another great teaching of Vivekananda. Science and religion. Again, I'm just touching upon them like a big picture view. Science and religion. Vivekananda set up a dialogue when he was here with Tesla, with William James, a great psychologist, with Tesla, not the car, the scientist Tesla. Tesla was, he became quite fond of Vivekananda. They actually have a correspondence which is available. With discussion between Tesla and Vivekananda. He was interested how to establish the truths of Vedanta or Sankhya on a firm scientific basis. Of course, the physics of the day was not advanced enough, but still, the spirit, his influence on literature. I'm not a literature man, but I've heard those who are experts in Bengali literature, his essays, Prachyo, Paschatto, Bartaman Bharat, these are a new form of writing in Bengali, which influenced the development of the Bengali language. In fact, they're recommended in MA classes in Bengali now. He had unique ideas about art and music also, especially Indian music. So anyway, vast range of development, and all of it, he wore it very lightly. He was a very, very funny man. Full of humor. Somebody asked him here in America, an American lady asked him, Swami, are you never serious? He said, yes, madam, I am. When I have a tummy ache, then I'm serious. All the time, laughing, joking, full of joy. We talk about Vivekananda's core ideas of spirituality, but I think the most important factor is the man himself. He just radiated this. He would uplift you by his very presence and by his words. Josephine MacLeod, she writes that she was a very high society lady. She was connected to some top people here in America and Europe. So she says, when I met the Tsar of Russia, indeed then Tsar of Russia, not Putin. When I met the Tsar of Russia, I felt how great he is and how insignificant I am. But when I met Vivekananda, I felt how great he is and how great I am. This was Vivekananda. He would arouse in you, he would arouse in us a sense of our own greatness and possibility. He would first infuse strength in us and make us bigger than what we are, greater than what we are. He would transmit spirituality. And say, well, he's gone now. I can't meet him personally. What can he do now? But he lives on in his words. If you read the complete works of Vivekananda, you come across that personality. Again, Romarola, he says, when I read Vivekananda at this distance of 30 years, so he's writing 30 years after Vivekananda passed, I feel an electric shock at reading these words. How much more it would have been to hear these words as they fell from the lips of this great hero. So even now, in the words of Vivekananda also, the actual words of Vivekananda, there's so much power, so much, some kind of, it's like those old Sanskrit mantras. I mean, apart from the message, there's a power in those words. If you read it, you feel inspired. All right, a few core ideas, then I'll stop. We can take some question answer. Vivekananda famously classified all of spiritual practice into the 4 yogas: Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Karma Yoga. He said the goal of human life is the manifestation of the divinity within us. You do it by service, that is Karma Yoga. You do it by worship, Bhakti Yoga. You do it by psychic control, meditation. Or you do it by philosophy, Jnana Yoga. Sometimes people object and say, oh, in Bengali, they say, philosophy to kichu hai na. This is philosophy, philosophy is an academic discipline, so that is not spirituality. Vivekananda uses the word philosophy for Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is philosophical inquiry. That's the highest use of philosophy. Philosophy will take you directly to enlightenment and God realization. Anyway, by one or more or all of these and be free. This is Swami Vivekananda's great teaching of the harmony of the 4 yogas. He says any one of them will take you to God realization and freedom. Or more. Combine bhakti and meditation, combine bhakti and karma, or meditation and jnana, and one or more, or all of them. And Vivekananda's own personal recommendation was to combine all 4 of them in your life. Now, we sort of hesitate because we all have predilections. We like something. By nature, we are bhaktas, devoted. Or by nature, we like the Vedantic approach, the intellectual approach, the philosophical inquiry. Or by nature, we are introverted, we are peace-seeking. So we turn inwards into calmness, into meditation. We like that. We like the idea of it. Not so easy, but at least we like the idea of it. Or we are humanitarian. You see, all of this kind of private spirituality, you're reading books or worshipping in a temple or meditating, sitting quietly and dozing. What spirituality is this? There's this whole wide world. It needs your help. Do as much as you can for them. Karma. Vivekananda says all of them are valid paths. Very quickly, what did he say about each one of them? Karma Yoga. See, all of these are paths for going beyond the limited ego. Karma Yoga. What makes us egotistic, limited is this body attachment. I am devoting all my efforts, all my life to making this body happy. I am sure I am only this one. So this one and whatever is related to this. Father, mother, husband, wife, brother, sister, mine, I and mine. And the I and mine is also not wrong but the I and mine is so limited to this. And that's what leads to problems. Karma Yoga says reverse that. Instead of slaving away all your life to take care of this body, what's wrong with it? You will be disappointed. This body will go older and sick and die one day. Then all your life's effort is wasted. Nobody thinks in this way. Vivekananda says, Karma Yoga says, take care of the the cosmic. Here is the divinity you are seeking in front of you, as these millions and millions of living beings of all races and gender and religions, no religion, all of them, they constitute God. Vivekananda says the sum total of human souls, this is the only God I believe in and bow down to. Is he saying something new? No. It's Vedanta. After all, what is the Vedantic conception of God? Maya upahita chaitanya. Consciousness associated with Maya at the causal level. And at the mental level, the cosmic mind. Consciousness associated with Maya and all our minds. And at this physical level, Virat, Vishwarup or Virat, consciousness associated with all bodies and minds. Exactly what Vivekananda is saying. Here is the living presence of God before you. Ignoring this, what God will you seek in a temple or a church? You can't, exactly. Without finding God in front of you, it's most visibly present. Where are you seeking, in an image or in a symbol or in a temple or a church? So worship them. How? In service. Especially you will find there are places where people they need your help. Immediately you can be of help. You can remove the tears of one person. Make one person happy also. That's a great thing. The United Nations headquarters is there in Manhattan. If you go there, one of the greatest secretaries generals of the United Nations was Dag Hammarskjöld, long ago, before my time at least. You have seen him? You have seen him. Some of you may have seen him. He was a philosopher. His writings are so inspiring. There's one writing there, I remember his writing. Remember who is saying this? Secretary General of the United Nations, who is tasked with maintaining peace in the world. He's saying, greater than all the cares and responsibilities of the world is if you can truly love even one person. Who's saying this? So, this pouring out your heart in love and service to the world, it helps you to attain peace and it takes you beyond sorrow. You know what gives sorrow? This concern with I, me, myself. Notice, even those people, maybe elderly, I've seen grannies in a household, old, physical problems are there, but because so many other people depend on her, she's up and doing from the morning till night. And no time to care for one's own ailments and problems. And mind is also good, happy. The more we care for others, the less we are concerned with our own little aches and pains, the happier we are. Bhakti. So the work is external. Bhakti. Swami Vivekananda says, what is the nature of bhakti? There is one kind of bhakti which is a worldly kind of bhakti. That I believe in God and the purpose of my belief in God is God will take care of me. Which me? This little me. My health, my job, my family will be fine, and that's it. What's wrong with it? Nothing as such. And it works also. God's blessings are on you if you believe in God and have faith in God, yes. But in the long run, it doesn't work. Because everything comes to an end. It's not a wise policy. Bhakti, the real bhakti is to love God. My life for the sake of God, not God for the sake of my life. Here I have a little life. God will help me. God is like an appliance, like a washing machine, like a car, like a computer, like Wi-Fi. It improves the quality of my life. So God is good. Limited use of God. The real bhakti is not God for my life for God. What is the purpose of my life? To love God. What good will it do? The moment we love God, it gives joy. Love immediately gives joy. And if you have love of God, it gives undiluted, unmixed joy. Love of the human being gives mixed joy. But love of God gives unmixed joy. What kind of love is it? Vivekananda says that love knows no rival. It must be focused on God and God alone. Not God plus 10 other things. Then love knows no bartering. It's not shopkeeping religion. I will love you and you will give me something. No. I will love you because I love you. That's really love. I can't help it if you don't give me anything. But I do love you. So that's no bartering there. And love knows no fear. If I love God, I have no fear in life at all. I'm fine with anything that happens in life. My whole thing is so no love, no fear, no rival, only God. I love God and only God. All other human beings also I love through God. And don't tell people, don't tell your husband, wife, children that from now on I don't love you. I love God only. In you there is God, I love that, but not you. Don't say that. Don't say that. But love God and only God, and no bartering, no exchange. If you don't exchange, you will get everything, more than everything. Vivekananda says, of course, it's a principle of Karma Yoga. Give, and do not look back. Whosoever looks back, his ocean dwindles to a drop. Dao dao phire nahi chao. Jeva phire chahe, ta shindu bindu hoya jaye. Shindu is ocean. Bindu is a drop. Then even love is something in the mind, in the heart. There is also time for meditation, for quietness, for shutting out the external world, shutting down even thoughts of God, absolute silence, freedom from the mind. Vivekananda was a born meditator from his childhood, even before he met Sri Ramakrishna. He could plunge, he had the ability to plunge into deep meditation. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha. Very important in this day of distraction, this world of distraction. All our devices, they're distracting. The message of focus, Vivekananda stands for that. In fact, the symbol he drew for Ramakrishna mission, for the Ramakrishna Martin mission, the lotus, which is bhakti, and then the sun is rising, and that is jnana, knowledge, and then the wavy waters, that is karma, action, and the swan is swimming there. The swan is God, Paramatma. The whole thing is encircled by a serpent. What is that serpent? It symbolizes yoga, the power of meditation, concentration. It's this Kundalini Shakti, power of meditation. Knowledge, devotion, work, jnana, bhakti, karma, all very good. But without the power of concentration, of focus, you will not achieve much. Anything in world, you want money, focus is necessary. You want knowledge, focus is necessary. Want to build a family or a company, focus is necessary. Not social media. So Vivekananda's message of focus. Imagine his first book was Raja Yoga, translation of the Patanjali Sutras, the Yoga Sutras, and that too from New York. In New York, he wrote that. There's a beautiful description of Vivekananda in New York. He says, while the great city slept, Vivekananda meditated. He would sit in a small room in deep meditation. The little apartment which was rented for Vivekananda, where he would give his classes. He says, often in the daytime, often we would walk, those who are writing, we would walk into the room suddenly to see Vivekananda sitting in absolute meditation like a Buddha. And he would become quiet and quietly back out of the room. Sometimes he would demonstrate meditation, how to sit, how to meditate in the class and go into Samadhi. 15 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour. Slowly people would get up and walk out. Okay, I'll wrap up. The people might get up and walk out slowly now. So the power of concentration, focus. And then Jnana Yoga, the direct path, so-called that. That's my favorite. I've talked so much about it, so I'm not going to talk in detail about it. You are this unlimited existence, consciousness, bliss. Swami Vivekananda says, have no fear at all. You are Brahman, you are Atman, your existence, consciousness, bliss, like Shankaracharya saying, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, you are that. Either you know it or not. One sadhu in Uttarakhand, in Gangotri, told me, Tum jano ya na jano, tum mano ya na mano, tum hi Ram. Whether you know it or you do not know it, you believe it or you do not believe it, you are Rama, you are God. The real you, not this body. Vivekananda says, I'm quoting directly from Vivekananda, there is no death for you. If a hair falls from our body, we do not care for it. The death of the body is nothing less than the hair falling, like the hair falling from. In the entire universe exists. I am the consciousness behind the entire universe. All of us are. And where is death for me? All bodies are mine and all minds are mine as consciousness. Where is death for me? Do not be afraid. The death of a body is nothing to you. You realize this, that you are Brahman. This is the goal of Jnana Yoga. And Vivekananda says, spirituality is these 4 yogas: Jnana, Bhakti, Karma, and Dhyana. And you can, any one of them is good. You combine it with more, even better. but his recommendation was a harmony of all 4 yogas. There's a lot to be discussed about this. It's not that it's a new message, but notice all the other masters. So if you go to Shankaracharya, Advaita Vedanta, what will they say? Yes, it's all good, but Jnana Yoga, the realization you're Brahman, that's the goal, and that will lead to liberation. And the others, devotion, work, meditation are all fine, but they will help you to prepare yourself for Jnana Yoga. But Jnana Yoga, the realization, Aham Brahmasmi, that is the ultimate goal. If you go to Ramanujacharya or Madhvacharya, they will say, Jnana is fine. You realize I'm not the body, not the mind. I am consciousness, I am a spirit, I am the Atman. But you are only Jivatman. There is a Paramatman beyond you. And you must set up a relationship of bhakti with Paramatman. And that bhakti alone will take you to liberation by the grace of God, by the kripa of Ishvara. Bhakti Yoga is the highest. Patanjali will tell you, all of these are just beliefs. What is Jnana Yoga? Reading books. How will that take you to liberation? What is Bhakti Yoga? Emotional singing and dancing and crying. How will that help you? Quieten your mind. The restlessness of your mind is what blocks you from liberation. Quieten your mind through meditation. Completely empirical, rational, demonstrated. You will see that you are the witness of the mind. Without quietening the mind, you will not see that. And that witness of the mind is beyond suffering. It is immortal. So through meditation, you will realize. So these are different paradigms. What Vivekananda did was, instead of a hierarchy, he said all of them will work. They're all right. The proof is that in every path there have been enlightened beings. So all of them will work. And combine all of them. Why combine? The one reason is that he said it's a safer and more wholesome path. We can talk about it if you have any questions. There are dangers of holding on to only one and ignoring the others because they are actually not independent of each other. Notice, as human beings, you have the capacity to think, cognitive. You have the capacity to feel, emotion, affective domain. And you have the capacity to do things, cognitive, willpower. Cognitive, affective, cognitive is the basic first lesson you learn in psychology. These three, jnana, karma, bhakti. So why not use all your powers? We do use all of them in our day-to-day life. Why not use it in spiritual life? All right. So this is the great teaching of the harmony of the 4 yogas. I pray to Thakur Ma Swamiji to bless all of us. May this spiritual truth awaken in our lives. It's there already in us. May it awaken in our lives, and may our lives be blessed. May we be a blessing to ourselves and to those around us. We'll take a couple of questions before we end for Arati. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Rupanamastu.
Namaskar, Swamiji.
Yes.
Pranams from all of us. Thank you for listening. We have
Yes.
Q&A session. I'll bring the microphone to you. So
Raise your hand and they'll bring the microphone. Yes, the gentleman here. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Bhavani Mukherjee
Yes.
from New Jersey.
Please sit.
I have a question which baffles me sometimes. It's beyond the concept of Shankaracharya and Ramanujan. I don't know whether the difference is subtle between the Bhakti Jog and the Jnana Jog, but it brings in a very fundamental paradox because between the Advaitavad and Dvaitavad. So how do you sort of analyze it in the concept that it is the same, whether one leads to the other or whatever?
Right. So you're right. The difference is not subtle. The difference is quite big because these systems, Advaitavad, Dvaitavad, Vishishtadvaitavad of Ramanujacharya, these are very consistent systems. They are complex philosophical structures and they are very consistent internally. You can't plug and play, take out a little bit from here, take out a little bit from there, and plug it together and then the whole thing will work. It won't work. Ramanuja says Bhakti is supreme because he has the whole philosophical and epistemological structure beneath him, which inexorably takes you to that conclusion that Bhakti must be supreme. Look at Shankaracharya. He says, you are Brahman. You are the infinite existence, consciousness, bliss. Then what's the problem? Problem is you tell me. I don't know this. Exactly. That's the problem. Ignorance is the problem. If ignorance is the problem, then what will be the solution? Knowledge is the only solution for ignorance. How do you get knowledge? Vichara, inquiry. Not by bhakti, not by meditation, not by doing some activity. So Shankaracharya, when he says Jnana Yoga is supreme, he is very consistent to the philosophy. So all of these are very sophisticated philosophical systems developed over centuries and millennia. They're very logically consistent with internally at least. And that's why they are not compatible easily with each other. Now, what Sri Ramakrishna contributed to this, and Vivekananda takes up from that, is that is it that then one of them is true and the others are false, as they have always claimed? In that case, Advaita Vedanta is true and the others are wrong interpretations or only partially true or inferior interpretations of Upanishads, because they were based on the same text. Advaita, Vishishtadvaita, Dvaita, Dvaitadvaita, Achintya, Vedaved, they're all based on Upanishad, Gita, to some extent Bhagavatam, and so on. So in the same text, you have generated these different philosophical systems. And they are not compatible easily with each other. Metaphysically not compatible, epistemologically not compatible, practice-wise also not compatible. But what Sri Ramakrishna says is that it is not that these are the ultimate truth. These are the people who came up with these, whether they enlightened or not. He says they were all enlightened. And by the grace of God, they realized one aspect, or in one way they realized God or the ultimate, which is, in its nature, is God Satchidananda and not Ishwar? No. God is an infinite reality beyond the total grasp of our intellect. So whatever we try to grasp with our intellect, we experience God. The enlightened person experiences God and becomes blessed thereby. And then if that enlightened person, by the grace of God, is going to be a teacher, that experience is now filtered through their understanding. And they set up a system to help us, the rest of us, to attain that. And that system works because many people attain God through that system also. So this was the unique genius of Sri Ramakrishna, to see these not as competing truths, that one is true, others must be false. One correct theory and all false theories, or one adequate theory, all inadequate theories. In Hinduism, we are not as harsh as I am right, you're all totally wrong. You're all right, but not as right as I am. That kind of approach is usually there. So, but still, mine is the correct one, the others are inferior. Instead of that, Sri Ramakrishna says they are all correct. How are they all correct? Isn't it illogical? They are all correct in the sense that they work, they take you to moksha. What they promise, they deliver. How is it that these conflicting theories they're conflicting? Let's be bold about it. Dvaita and Advaita are not compatible. Advaita is compatible with Dvaita only in the sense that Advaita will say, we are the truth. Brahman is the reality, you are Brahman. And what you worship as God is only in the realm of ignorance. It's a helpful practice. Only in that way it is compatible. But Sri Ramakrishna doesn't say that. He says they're all true because they will help you to reach God. In colloquial Bengali, he said, so whether you take a pie and eat it this way or you eat it that way, it still tastes the same. So you are accessing the reality. It's not that one is accessing the reality, another one is accessing some lower reality. Not true. So all the teachings of Advaita Vedanta are very fine. Follow them sincerely, they will take you to enlightenment. But so too are the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or Ramanujacharya or the Buddha. How interesting. When the Buddha's teachings were being discussed before Sri Ramakrishna, Nastik does not believe in God. How can this God-loving, who is a devotee of Ma Kali and who weeps at the name of Krishna, worships Shiva, worships Rama, Jesus, all forms of God, you confronted with Buddha who does not talk about God and Buddhists who deny the existence of God. Nastik does not believe in the existence. And in the technical sense, Nastik means does not believe in the Pramana of the Vedas, but in the colloquial sense, Nastik means atheist. An agnostic or atheist philosophy. How will Sri Ramakrishna support it? Sri Ramakrishna says, in Bengali, I'll translate, Nastik keno go? Mukhe bolte parini, ja upalabdhi hoyechilo. Why do you call him Nastik? He could not express, it cannot be put in language. We could not express doesn't mean that Buddha was illiterate. He was a highly educated person. It's a prince and highly educated, and learned in all the philosophies current at that time. He could not express because any expression is wrong. There's no precise expression of the ultimate truth. So in that sense, all of them are true only in the sense that they work, but you cannot fit them in the sense of logic. In an intellectual structure, all of these will be different from each other from an intellectual perspective. Yes. Couple of more questions. Anybody else is there? Only two of you here, one more, three. That's it. Yes.
Maharaj, I have a very simple question actually.
Please tell us your name. Sit down.
My name is Deepak Ghosh. I have a question actually, using an example of a pyramid. There are four sides, and four sides represent, for example, the different yoga that you just mentioned. When you're at the base of the pyramid, all the sides are basically far away. But when you move towards the peaks, they come closer.
That's right. That's a very good example. Yes.
The point is that, as Swamiji said, that you have to optimize all things, embrace all the four yogas. For us, the so-called unevolved soul, if I may use the word, we are at the base of the pyramid. When you basically try to embrace all the four, you get a huge conflict. But as you evolve over time in the soul, then you can understand the connectedness of those things.
True.
So don't you think so for us, a normal human being with a simple mind, that we should follow one path and rather than all our hands into all the four?
No, I think
ourselves?
Vivekananda's teaching was actually, it's a more holistic and more safer and wholesome path to follow all four. And they are not all four, they're all connected. And for practitioners, you will see, you will not be clear, you will not be very certain, is this person doing karma yoga or bhakti yoga? Somebody is going, I've seen monks going and, treating patients in the hospital or teaching students in the school. Looks like karma yoga. But if you ask them, my Lord is present in the sick and in the ignorant and the poor, and I'm worshipping my Lord through this. It looks like bhakti yoga from inside. Right? So an integration of all of them is more useful because it brings into play all our powers. Power of feeling, power of intellect, power of doing. It is a more wholesome path. And there are dangers of holding on to one. Yeah, they may seem contradictory at the beginning. That is true. If you are meditative, you will feel all this karma yoga, I'm not getting time for meditation. Or you are when you sit down for meditation, you're feeling, dozing off. You see, what a waste of time. I should go and do some good work for us. Usually the other yoga seems much more attractive when you're doing one yoga. Then the others seem attractive. The grass is green on the other side of the fence, like that. But that's because of our incapacity. It's much more better. It's a harmony of yogas. Yoga Samanvaya is. And remember, it's not really all that new. Practically speaking, if you go and ask Ramanujacharya or Shankaracharya, what should I do? Should I read the scriptures? Should I worship God? Or should I do Nishkama Karma? That means selfless service. They will say do all four. In all of these, in Sanatana Dharma and Hinduism, generally in all these approaches, you will find that all the yogas are included. All the yogas are there. But just the understanding and the structure is different in different philosophies. And in the other teachings, there's a hierarchy where Vivekananda makes it flat, that any one of them will work. We do that because we have likings and dislikings. Depending on your structure of the psyche, some of us are more meditative than some of us are more active, some of us more devotional. And you see, that kind of philosophy will appeal to us immediately. Some are more intellectually inclined. They love Advaita Vedanta. They'll foolishly sneer at bhakti. Some are devotional and they love bhakti and they will think these Advaitins just reading books, no good. So on. Yes. The gentleman there will then... all right. We'll answer the questions here and then we'll go there. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Namaste, Swamiji. My name is Sonali. And this wonderful topic of, harmony of all religions and harmony of the four yogas, yeah, that's, it appeals to me immensely. However, I have a question. You also said that reality is beyond all this.
Yes.
Right? So what about atheists? They don't particularly, want to put their mind towards a God or a supreme reality or anything. But they might be, I've personally met quite a few people who are very well, balanced in their mind, in their behaviors, in their attitude towards life. Raga, Dvesha, and they're also very focused on, whatever they might be doing in their field of work and so on. And they're good family people, they're ethical, moral, they're living good lives. So it's just that the Tattva Gyan part, right? That's something that doesn't interest them. But they're good at the Ragveshka balancing and all of the rest.
In that case, don't disturb them.
Yes. So I just feel that they're reaching the reality in their own way.
Yeah, maybe everybody's reaching reality in their own way because life itself takes us there. I say, do it consciously, then you're a yogi or a spiritual seeker. Not doing it, I'm not interested at all in all of this. Then you're unconsciously moving towards that. The difference between such an atheist and a spiritual seeker would be the atheist is not interested, does not admit anything transcendental. This life is all that there is. If the person says, I don't believe in, I'm not interested in anything beyond God, Buddha nature, nirvana, enlightenment, I'm not interested. In agnostic. This person is called agnostic. And the person says, I don't believe in it at all. Such a thing is not there at all. Then atheist. So that's the idea. As long as there is no felt need and life is going along well, as you're saying, why disturb that? Because I'm spiritual, everybody else has to be spiritual. No, not necessarily. Vedanta is very patient. Take your time. We'll be there. 1,000 years later, next life also will be there. Yeah, in fact, this is interesting because I'm actually going to speak to one of the most prominent atheists of our time. Next week, in a couple of weeks' time, Sam Harris. So he is an atheist, one of the leading atheists with Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, who has passed, Daniel Dennett. So he is completely against all religion. However, he makes an exception for Advaita Vedanta and Dzogchen Buddhism. He says in these two traditions, there is a core of truth. Even here, he doesn't accept all the associated temple religiosity. There's a core of truth which we cannot deny. In any rational person, we cannot set it aside. There's something there. So that is at least our beginning. We will talk about it.
Pranam Swamiji, this is Purnima. I'm from Boston. So I had a very interesting discussion today. And I think you have given the answers before, but I would like to clear up my queries in my mind. So Swami Vivekananda said, many come to understand, but few realize. So our discussions were,
in the path of knowledge.
In the path of knowledge, yes. So our discussion was, I have started understanding this well and kind of understand that I'm not the mind and body. But I honestly feel it's not starting to tingle in the nerves, meaning where the disassociation hasn't happened totally. And what is God realization, according to me, is where you are centered. You're centered, Ragdvesh, you observe it, but it doesn't matter to you anymore. The mind doesn't matter to you anymore. You see it as an object, so much so that it becomes part of your life. So my question is, but again, back to our discussion, what we got to was, if you really understand, then how can you not realize?
If you really understand, how can you not realize? True. It is a problem in every path. In bhakti, one may shed tears, does not mean one has become particularly spiritual. It's easy to shed tears. You become emotional, you can shed tears. In meditation, one can sit calmly and feel a calmness of mind. That does not mean you have to realize you are the Purusha apart from Prakriti. Similarly, in Jnana Yoga, one begins to understand. Little bit of effort, stick to it, keep on listening, thinking about it, clarity comes. There is a danger. In the particular danger of Jnana Yoga, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Ramakrishna has also pointed this out. In Bengali, he says, Bhabche hoye geche. They think that it's done. I'm enlightened. But how do you check? Are you enlightened or not? One very good way of checking is, are the benefits flowing or not? You're supposed to feel completely fulfilled, unshakably fulfilled, and you're supposed to be above suffering. So problems will keep coming in life, but you are not shaken by it. The tests are given by Krishna in the Sthita Prajna Lakshana in the Bhagavad Gita at the end. When Arjuna asks this question, so if I'm enlightened, what will it be like? And Krishna says, so for example, he says, first one, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogata atmanyevatmana tushta sthita prajnastaduchyate. Your realization is stabilized if you can remain in that aham brahmasmi and not be disturbed by waves of raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes and desires rising in the mind and pulling you out. That requires not only realization, but a pretty good practice of meditation also. I realize this, I am the witness consciousness, stay there, shut down the senses and the mind. Easier said than done. Okay, that's one test. So that's absorption. In practical life, you'll be like someone like Totapuri, daily goes into samadhi. Vivekananda, at the flip of a switch, he could go into samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna, of course, every day. So, if not samadhi, at least a deep, peaceful absorption. There's a lot to be discussed there because samadhi is not that easy at all. Second, he says, when you're not in samadhi, you're interacting with the world, then lots of things keep happening in the world, which are to your liking and not to your liking also. We all have minds, so there's some things to our liking and something not to the liking of the mind. Those things will keep happening because of past karma. People, environment, our own bodies, our own minds, so many things will happen. You are the witness of all of them. Then what is the test? The test is dukkeshu anudvignamana sukheshu vigataspriya vitaraga bhaya krodha sthitadi muniruchyate. You are enlightened if in things which you consider unpleasant, disease, COVID, people are nasty to you, things don't go the way you want them to go. You want means the mind wants it to go. Mind clearly has likes. It's very natural. But things don't happen the way you like it. It's quite possible. It will happen. In all our lives. Anudvignamana. Not only you are the witness consciousness, always the witness of mind, but the mind also does not get upset. Because the realization is there in the mind. I am the witness. And the realization is there in the mind itself. Since I am the witness, this mind is an instrument. Why should it get upset? Let me be completely balanced and focused in the midst of trouble also. Sukheshu vigataspriya. When things go our way, what do we try to do? Hold on to it. Let it stay. Let more of it come to me. That also is not there. Let it come, let it be, let it go. Can I do that? Not easy at all. Yet, notice, if I am an enlightened person, if I'm enlightened person also is a contradiction in terms. Enlightened means I realize I am this impersonal consciousness. In that case, the mind should be less and less disturbed. It should be less and less perturbed by good and bad. If that is happening, then it's a good sign. If it's not happening, then I have come to an understanding, but it is not yet percolated down to the other levels of this personality. And that can always happen. The whole Jivan Mukti Viveka book is there. It's exactly for that purpose. A lot of people face this issue. So this is a problem in Jnana Yoga, and it has to be worked out. There are problems in every path. This is a particular problem in Jnana Yoga. Then next, so this is at the level of the mind. In the level of our interactions with the world, what will you do? Third shloka, Krishna says, Ya sarvatra anavisneya tattat praptya shubhashuvam navinandanti nadveshti tasya prajna pratishtita. One sadhu put it, prajna pratishtita means established. Where is your mind? Where is it staying? So he put it nicely in Hindi. Kutta kiske liye poonch hilata hai? For what does the dog wag its tail? Dog is very happy when you wags the tail. He sees you wags the tail. Very happy. So the mind, where does the mind wag its tail? When praise is there, it starts wagging the tail. Success is there, wagging the tail. More Facebook likes, wagging the tail. Or centered in peace in the witness consciousness, or centered in the mantra and Ishta Devata, then the mind is happy. You see, just observe the mind. It will change over time. So these are the ways in which we check. This is the meaning of many come to an understanding, few realize. Good, let's wrap it up now.
One more.
We'll take it up later, afterward. Oh, the gentleman, you did not ask your question. Sorry, sir. Yes, ask your question.
Namaste, Swamiji.
Tell
My
us your
name is
name.
Abhishek. So the question I have, I've been reading about the Dirghdarsha Viveka, and the question I have is about the I, the ego. So in a deep sleep, when we are in a deep sleep, there is no mind, there is no intellect, and there is no I. And as soon as we come from the deep sleep into the waking state, the reflected consciousness shine into the mind, and we identify I as me, I self. So the question I have is, when the person is enlightened, that I as ego is going to be there, or if I as ego is not there, only the ignorance is removed.
Ignorance is removed, and the ego is also there, but I am not the ego. Look at what Shankaracharya sings: Mano buddhi ahankara chittani naham. I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am not the memory. I am not the ego. You translate it directly, it will become I am not I. It sounds contradictory. But I am the witness consciousness which shines on the ego. When the ignorance is not removed, it's like you have a mirror. My face is reflected in the mirror. For some reason, I don't know this is my real face. I think that's who I am. I am there in the mirror. That's the ego. What happens in the ego actually ties me, the real me. I am obscured. My real nature is not there. Is obscured, and I think I am the face in the mirror, which is false. But when enlightenment comes, you can get the mirror. Face will be reflected in the mirror. As long as the mirror is there, there will be a reflection in the mirror. But if I know, just as we all know, I am this one, I am not that one. We all know. When my face is reflected in the mirror, I don't at all think that I am there. It's just a reflection of I am here. That's a reflection. That's the state of the enlightenment. This is described in Dirghdarsha Viveka. Yeah, this is a subtle point. What watching? All right, let's wrap it up and do the arati now.
And Namaskar, quick housekeeping announcement. We'll have Arati set up. Swamiji will do the Arati. We'll have lights off after the Arati for 10 minutes of silent meditation. Please stay here. Once the lights come back, you can walk out. And we have prasadam outside. And we have several initiatives of volunteering, community service. You can sign up outside. If you have not been here before, feel free to leave your contact number so we can stay connected. We have a website. You can often visit that. And thank you again for coming. And Arati will begin very soon. Thank you again.
সিগন্যাল করে দিচ্ছি।
Vai
Swamiji Maharaj ki
Okay, this concludes today's stream. Thank you.